guys? Welcome back to this week's episode of Outside the Arena. I'm Griffin Senyek, joined by my good friend today, Devin Bernstein. And we're back once again this week for another episode. A bit of a slow week in sports, to be honest. I mean, now that football's over, it's kind of in that dry period where the draft really hasn't picked up yet. Free agency's not to come. Baseball is obviously an absolute disaster right now with the state of the lockout, just an absolute mess. So the NBA is really taking center stage, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're really just going to kind of break down the current state of the NBA, what we think is going to proceed over these next few weeks. A lot of players are getting injured slowly but surely. We've seen Chris Paul, Darius Garland, some recent names that, really could be out for a while. So a lot to talk about. But I guess we'll kind of start in the Eastern Conference. Devin here, for the people who do not know, is a big Sixers fan. So I think it's only right that we start with the biggest news in the NBA recently, which is James Harden being traded to the Sixers. And, Philadelphia is undefeated with Mr. Harden. He dropped a triple-double in today's win over the Knicks. I mean, Devin, what's been your early impressions of James Harden and the fit he really has on the 76ers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here. The first thing that's been really apparent in these couple of games is been the chemistry between he and Embiid is instantly been kind of pretty great, which is a really good sign to me, given that Harden's mostly been playing, throughout his career. Most of his big guys have been guys like Capella, Dwight Howard, kind of more rim running big guys, and then, a bunch of shooters around him. And Embiid, as good as he is, he's not your typical, run, jump, and dunk center, like, Harden has been used to. But even so, the two are just so good that it seems like they've already been able to figure it out. Outside of that, I mean, Harden's just a great passer. I think that's something you forget. But 16 assists today, 12 assists against Minnesota, I believe. And, just finding guys, the pick and roll's unstoppable. I've really like everything so far. They're even already kind of staggering the minutes so that it's, usually Embiid and Maxey or Tobias and Harden, which I think does a good job of kind of, even though they're four really good guys, that allows us to spread out the shots a little more and, keep up a better unit on the court at all times, which has been something with Doc Rivers in the past. But yeah, I've loved the start for this group. It's looked pretty great so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of key points. I mean, it's clear already that it's a really perfect fit between the two of them. I mean, I think the way Embiid's played this year, I mean, he's been, the best top three player, wherever you want to put him. I mean, there's a lot of good players right now, but, he's for sure this season been in the top three. And, James Harden really just adds a whole nother level to this Philadelphia team offensively, really. I mean, with the Ben Simmons trade, obviously Ben Simmons, while he was there, he was a strong defender, had good moments, but this year he hasn't been playing. So you're essentially just inserting James Harden for, Seth Curry, who obviously is a solid player, and Drummond, who, has had his heyday in the league at this point, kind of a more transition to a backup at this point. But I mean, Harden looks great. I mean, I think Harden's always been a very good player. I know, the points, he's never going to average what he did in Houston. I mean, those are just ridiculous numbers on a team that had no other scoring options. So I think it's good for him to really not have the pressure of having to score per se with Embiid and be able to use him. And I think, for the Sixers too, offensively, I mean, having Harden just takes a lot of pressure off Embiid because, teams are not going to be able to just double both these guys. So automatically, one of these guys is going to have a great matchup and whatnot, night in and night out. It's clear that this team is built to win. I mean, I'd say Harden and Embiid, I mean, it's probably the best duo in the NBA right now, I'd have to say. I mean, obviously you can look at, LeBron and AD, but AD hasn't been fantastic this year. KD, Kyrie, obviously another strong duo. I mean, there's a lot of good duos, but I think Harden and Embiid are probably the best duo in the league, and that's not all this Philadelphia team has, which makes them dangerous. I mean, they've got Tobias Harris, who as a third option with Harden and Embiid is really dangerous. Maxey is a great player. Thybulle's excellent defender. I mean, there's a lot of pieces on this Philadelphia team, a lot to like. So I mean, this is their they had that year with Jimmy, obviously in the playoffs where they lost to Toronto, which I think was outside of this year their best shot to win the title. But
right.
This is their title window with Embiid. I mean, he's a player who, due to his past nature of having injuries, who knows what's going to happen with him in his later years. So I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to be able to play dominantly into his late 30s, even mid 30s potentially. So this is the time to capitalize on his prime, which appears to be right now his peak. And, they did that by acquiring Harden, and so far so good for them. I mean, couldn't have
Yeah.
asked for a better start, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there's no better time than right now. I mean, I think obviously generally in the history of the NBA, we haven't seen a ton of, superstar trades at the trade deadline. Obviously last year with Harden, who's been traded twice in
Yeah.
like a year and a half, which is insane. But forgetting that, it's rare you see a guy get traded midseason and then that team really, completely changes midseason. You saw Powell, to the Lakers, Rasheed Wallace to the Pistons in '04. That team ended up winning the championship, but he was kind of the third option offensively on that team. Like he was a good player, but that's all due respect, that's nothing compared to the impact James Harden has on this team. So that's one thing that I would say I'm worried about. But you've got Harden who's into his early 30s, and he's not been one to that things can go south pretty quickly with Harden, as we've seen recently. And like you touched on with Embiid, you never know if he's going to get hurt or if he's just not going to be the same one day. So I think there's no better time than right now. And it's not like the rest of the team is bad either. Like you said, I mean, Maxey, for a guy in his second year, looks like he's been in the league for 10 years. And Tobias, I mean, Tobias has had his struggles for sure in the playoffs, and in these first two games it's kind of looked like he's just a role player. But I think at the end of the day it's a good problem to have if Tobias isn't getting enough shots. And hopefully these are all good basketball players, whether it's Tobias who steps up defensively a little more, or Harden says, what, I'm fine to only put up 20 a game, or Embiid gets back to really being a defensive player of the year caliber guy. Just he really hasn't been able to be that guy because of the offensive load this year, but that could eventually change. You saw today he had 4 blocks, and obviously the 27 free throw attempts jump out to me as like obviously it can be annoying to watch that, but at the same time most of his free throws, you look at the play, like you can't tell me that he wasn't fouled there. The reason he gets so many free throws is because people can't really stop him without fouling him.
Yeah. I mean, Philadelphia, it's clear that this team, I think arguably they got to be the favorites right now in the East, with that duo, like we've been talking about, Harden and Embiid. But the Eastern Conference this year is very fascinating. I mean, obviously the one in the 8 seed right now are separated by 8 games, but the middle of this pack, I mean, starting from, I'd say the Sixers are pretty safe, but Cleveland down to, the play-in with the Raptors. I mean, it's all between, 3.5 games right now. So it's really tight in the Eastern Conference. A lot of good teams in the East. Outside of Philadelphia, I mean, what are the teams you're kind of looking at and saying, maybe 3 teams that you think are elite contenders and can compete with a team like the Sixers and really have a chance to come out of the East?
Yeah. So number one would definitely be my kind of co-favorites in the East. I would say either one of these could be your pick, and I really wouldn't disagree with you at all. That would be the Bucks. Championship pedigree. Giannis is one of the best players in the world. He's a great defender. Their defensive system has given Embiid some troubles, although before the break we saw Embiid have a great game against them. And again, Embiid and Harden is not going to be easy for any defense to prepare for. But again, that's a defense that's given a lot of teams some issues. I would say one thing is if they get Brook Lopez back, just to have a big body who can kind of commit himself to Embiid and not have to worry about having Giannis on him for a majority of the game, because obviously with foul trouble and energy and etc. That's ideally you wouldn't have to have Giannis on Embiid all of the time, but between him and Ibaka and Portis, and then obviously in some possessions you can put Giannis on Embiid and understand that Giannis is one of the best defenders in the world. And to be honest, for them, I would say their big concern is really just Chris Middleton has really had a tough year. I think he played great in the playoffs last year. I don't think they win that championship without him playing at the level he did. And I think he will get back to that level, but I don't think people are talking about that quite enough. He's had a tough year, and I think that's been a big reason why they've had a tiny dip in the record, which obviously championship hangover, injuries, etc. But they're definitely a threat. Number 2, I think you look at the Heat. Just the defense, Jimmy, Bam, Kyle Lowry is a guy who hasn't really been shooting that much in the regular season, but I won't be surprised at all if he gives you some clutch performances in the playoffs, as much as, you know, he's kind of been known as a playoff choker. I still don't I won't be surprised if he turns it up in the playoffs. And then they've got shooters kind of everywhere between Duncan Robinson. Hero's a great sixth man. PJ Tucker's a great glue guy. I mean, they're well coached. In terms of upper end talent, we might have the two best players in that series, but you still don't want to mess with the Heat. And then third would be my I think every NBA fan's dream series would be a Nets Sixers series for very obvious reasons, between, you know, potentially the best scorer in the NBA and Kevin Durant. You have one of the most skilled basketball players on earth who's probably going to be able to play every game. It looks like after the ruling today, at least come playoff time, it looks like Kyrie will be playing every game. And then you have the, you know, kind of question mark of Ben Simmons, you know, with the back injury. And they don't seem to be in a huge rush to get him back to playing, but I think he will be back by playoff time. And again, it's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of if they can stay healthy, if they can fit together. There are a lot of questions. There's a lot of guys on the team who think they deserve minutes. I mean, you look at their roster, you've got about 13, 14 guys who it's like, not all these guys are going to play. Like, they're going to have to figure something out. But ultimately, it's more of a good problem to have. They have a lot of guys you can throw out there. And again, one of the few guys that in a series right now, you're like, he might actually be as good or better than Joel Embiid and in Kevin Durant, who obviously we haven't seen in a while, but he's a great player. So those would be my main three. I would give an honorable mention to the Bulls. I think they're always slighted. Everyone is always like, oh, the Bulls are kind of fake. They're not real contenders. I think they are, but I think they fall just outside the top three for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the East is extremely fascinating. I mean, there's teams for me. You've got obviously, you know, teams like the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Raptors that, you know, I don't think any of those teams are necessarily championship ready, but they're all teams that, you know, I think, you know, I mean, Cleveland's in a tough spot right now with Garland out and Levert's out and Rondo's hurt. I mean, their Sexton's been out the whole year, so they're really banged up. I mean, I could see them, in all honesty, falling off a little bit, maybe even falling into the plan just because of these injuries and how killer they are. I mean, they're going to start Brandon Goodwin out there at point guard instead of their all-star point guard. It's not ideal for a team fighting for a playoff spot. You know, the Celtics and the Raptors, you know, I think they're good teams. I don't necessarily think they're going to compete for the title. Could I see any of these teams winning a playoff series? Absolutely. Like, I think any of these teams, they all kind of have something about them that you know, gives them a chance to, you know, win and has led them to be successful. I just don't think, you know, those are real title contenders. I think the rest of these teams, I mean, the Bucks, like you said, I mean, they've been there. They've got Giannis, and Giannis is one of those guys at this point who, you know, the way he plays, how hard he plays, how efficient he is, how, you know, good of a defender he is. You know, just having him makes you instant title contenders. Like,
Right.
he can completely change a game, and they've got a good team around him, and they've done a good job. Their depth is, you know, better than it has been at recent moments. So I think the Bucks are a good team. Like you said, I mean, the Heat are a solid team. They've got a lot of players. You know, Jimmy, Bam, Kyle Lowry. I mean, these guys haven't even really played together too much this season. They're 40 and 21. So it really shows that team's legit. And Brooklyn is, I think, the most fascinating team out of this bunch because, I mean, if Brooklyn is healthy, I'll be honest, like, they might be my favorites.
Right.
I mean, you've got Kevin Durant, who, you know, was him, Giannis, and Embiid are, you know, maybe the top three players. I mean, you got to probably put Jokic, LeBron. I mean, that's probably your top five right there in the NBA right now, the way they're playing. I mean, KD, Kyrie, I mean, the whole Kyrie situation is obviously so odd at this point. It seems like he's going to play, but then you hear things that he's not going to play right away because there's this sector and whatnot. I mean, it's a very odd situation at this point, to be honest, but you got to imagine the way things are trending and whatnot, that he'll be at least able to play at home for the playoffs. And then, I mean, Ben Simmons is the big question mark. I mean, he's got back issues now. I mean, if he's on the floor, I think he'll be successful as a, you know, third option and someone who really, I think, on that team, there's not going to be much pressure on him to score the basketball, which I think is key. You know, he's just going to be there. If he can be a solid defensive player, a good passer, you know, rebound some shots, I mean, that's kind of all they need him to do. So at the end of the day, I think, you know, Ben Simmons will be a good fit. I think he's set up for success there. Obviously, if he plays Philadelphia, I mean, that could be a whole nightmare of a series for him. Obviously, I think things would get ugly, but when you've got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, it definitely helps because I don't think there's as much pressure on him to be a scorer, be that, you know, stud option as he was in Philadelphia per se. They don't really, you know, there's not as much pressure, let's say, on Ben Simmons to get a jump shot in Brooklyn as there was in Philadelphia.
I think
And then,
sorry,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you can go ahead.
I just think if Simmons is in a place where, fouling him is not, it's not like teams are just intentionally fouling him and putting him on the line, just daring him to score. I think we'll be in a fine position just between, again, two of the best scorers, honestly, of all time on that team. And then you've got Seth Curry, you've got Patty Mills, you've got Bruce Brown. You potentially could have Joe Harris coming back. I mean, the amount of shooting, spacing, the offensive talent on this team is better than he ever had it in Philly, regardless of Embiid. And pretty much all of those guys that I mentioned can really shoot it well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them use him kind of at the 5 at the end of games in a kind of Draymond Green type of role, which I think, I think he's just too good of a basketball player not to succeed in that. But then, you could also have the Simmons who's scared to go to the line. He can't shoot. He's, kind of seems checked out. Like, you never really know with Simmons. He's a huge question mark. Obviously, the same can kind of be said with Kyrie, more of an off the court thing, with the injuries and the fact that he kind of just left the team for a period last year, and KD struggled to stay healthy. But there's so many question marks. They fascinate me beyond belief. They signed Goran Dragic, which is interesting. I have no idea. If you wanted to tell me the Nets losing the play-in, I would be like, sure. If you tell me the Nets win the championship, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Like, I think they probably have the widest range of outcomes, like realistically, of any team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fascinating. I think it's all gonna depend on health at the end of the day. Right now they got a bunch of, it's a nightmare to say the least. But if they can get all these guys on the floor at the same time, I mean, it really could be scary. And then lastly, before we move to the Western Conference here, I mean, the Chicago Bulls are a very interesting team. I mean, I honestly think I feel they're underrated, to be honest. I mean, I think that DeMar DeRozan right now has been this last stretch of games. I mean, he's been like the best player in the NBA at this point. I mean, he's just on an absolute tear, and it's very good to see him succeeding. I think this guy, especially after the San Antonio days, really got left out of the conversation as one of these elite players, and people kind of forgot how good he was in Toronto. I mean, that guy was, a superstar there, and he's really succeeded there. And I mean, this team is, they're a deep team. They've got a lot of talent. They've got obviously Vucevic, at full health, Lonzo Ball. They've got Levine, who's been banged up. They had, the guard Ayo, Dosun Manu. I completely botched that, but out of Illinois. I mean, I don't know how that guy, I mean, the weird thing about the NBA draft is you see all these guys succeeding in college, and then they just go in like the second round, some of these guys. And, I mean, that's one of the guys who, if you watch him in college, you'd be like, yeah, I think he'll be a solid NBA player. And, it's not really surprising to see he's succeeding. I don't really know why. It's one of these weird things about the NBA draft where it's like, there's some of these guys that just do so well, but people are like, oh, you don't have the build to be in the NBA. Send him in the second round.
It's every year there's a few guys where it's just like, yeah, maybe this guy's, a little older or whatever, but it's like, I don't see a world where he doesn't become a solid NBA player. And I feel like Ayo was one of those guys who's just like, okay, like whatever team takes him, it's going to be a steal, but
Yeah, very odd. But I mean, they've got a lot of good players. They signed Tristan Thompson, obviously, who, he's not a stud, but to have a guy who's, had championship experience, been to 4 finals and whatnot, it can only help you, especially, that team, to be honest, they do lack some of that championship pedigree. Not a lot of those guys. I mean, they do have guys like Caruso, I guess you could say, but like the main guys, Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, these are guys that haven't really seen much of the playoffs, to be honest. So, guys like that, veterans like that help at the end of the day. And, you need that really to win a championship. So very interesting. I think the East is going to be fascinating to watch. I think the Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be truly, I mean, it's going to be very exciting to watch, because I don't think there's really potentially any series where there's not one of those teams where, normally you have these teams in the 7 and 8 seeds, I feel, that are, these teams that are just going to get ran over. And right now in the 7 and 8 seeds, you got the Raptors and the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, it could really shape up to be an incredible playoff. Yeah. So the East is going to be extremely fun to watch moving forward, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree with you when you were like, oh, like, I don't really see the Celtics or the Raptors or the Cavs, making a run. But at the same time, these are teams that could win series. And honestly, if you look at them like 2 years ago, you placed them in that NBA, like they're a team you could see making the conference finals. But now it's just the East has become so loaded with those top 5 teams. It seems crazy to even discuss any of those teams making a run, even though, I love the Raptors defense and their switchability, and I love the way Van Vliet's playing, and the Celtics have been like great in the new calendar year, and the Cavs are having a great season, but at the same time, it just feels wrong to even include them as legitimate contenders. Unfortunately, it's a problem with the NBA right now. It's too stacked almost.
It really is. But then on the flip side here, moving over to the Western Conference, I mean, this is a conference right now where it really seems to be, you've got a few teams and maybe three teams, maybe 4 teams, and that's it. I mean, the rest of it is just, I mean, obviously the Lakers are, I mean, everyone will talk about the Lakers. I mean, it's just weird. It's hard to even fathom how the Lakers have been so bad this season. The Clippers, I mean, that's one of the biggest not nightmares, but just, I mean, when they signed Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I mean, this team has been mediocre this year, and in the last few years hasn't done anything. I mean, crazy disappointment. You've obviously got teams like the Timberwolves. They're not going to do anything in the playoffs if we're being honest. The Mavericks, as good as the Mavericks and Nuggets, as good as Luka and Nikola Jokic are. I mean, I don't know if either of those teams are going anywhere in the playoffs. The Jazz are first or second round exit. I mean, it's all these teams. I mean, the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, you got the Grizzlies at the top. I mean, what are your thoughts on the state of the Western Conference right now? Because it really seems like, I mean, honestly, for me right now, I can't see a team outside of Phoenix or Golden State. I mean, even the Grizzlies, how good they played, I don't know if they had the experience quite yet. I mean, I honestly can't see either Phoenix or Golden State not being in the NBA Finals at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the only teams that I definitely consider teams that I would be, kind of, I'm, in the East, there's like 6 teams that I'm like, yeah, this team should win at least one series. The only 2 teams that I'm like, this team is definitely looking like a team that's at least going to win one playoff series are the Suns and the Warriors. I mean, look at the Grizzlies. They've had a great year. Ja's playing great, but this isn't a team that's won a playoff series. This isn't a team that has been there. And I don't necessarily not trust them, but I don't think they've built, that level of trust where, you can just automatically pick them. We've seen the Jazz struggle year after year after year in the playoffs and kind of refuse to do anything about it. And, Donovan Mitchell's great. Gobert is a great interior defender, but ultimately they've gotten, kind of embarrassed in multiple playoff runs in a row. And then to me, then it starts to get interesting. I think the Mavs are a team that I've actually have a decent amount of confidence in. Justin Luka's playing great right now. And they've built a very good defense. And honestly, if you look at the big reason why the record isn't good, it's because they're just kind of having a lot of guys who are having some off shooting seasons. Tim Hardaway Jr. is out and he could be coming back at some point. Obviously there was the Porzingis trade, which I'm not exactly sure what was the mindset behind that, but you're getting at least Dinwiddie and Bertans who can be on the court. And again, you have Luka, who's a rising star in this league. And if they can continue to play great defense, I think they could, maybe win a series. And then you look at my 3 big question mark teams. That would be the LA teams and the Nuggets. And the reason why they're question marks to me is because when fully healthy and fully, ready or whatever, they have the ability to at least, win a series or 2. And for the LA teams, they're both championship contenders if they're at their absolute peak. But, Kawhi might play, he might not. Paul George, he might play, he might not. We don't really know. And generally, I feel like when you're not hearing much buzz about a guy, it's not the best of news in the world. The Nuggets, Jamal Murray, it was around a year ago when he tore his ACL. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him back in the playoffs. But, coming off an ACL, that's never going to be easy to rely on a guy who's coming off an ACL. You got Michael Porter Jr. I think he's supposed to come back around the end of the regular season. But again, you don't really know where he's going to be at. He was struggling to start the year. And then the Lakers, I think we would need to devote a whole nother podcast to talk about them. But they're a mess. But obviously they have LeBron and Anthony Davis, which generally is not a fun thing to play in the playoffs. So I think those are 3 teams that I could see. I would say maybe one of those teams gets healthy or figures it out and wins a series or 2. I would say the Suns and Warriors are probably both. I would say they're on a collision course to meet in the conference finals right now. And then I think, one of the Jazz or the Grizzlies. One of those teams will probably win a series. Shout out to the Timberwolves for having a pretty solid year. Pretty, good story, but I don't think they're really gonna be able to contend to win a series here. So yeah, the West is very interesting too.
Yeah, I mean Phoenix Phoenix is great. Golden State, they're a great ball club. The Memphis Grizzlies, they're 22 games over 500. This is a good team, but they've got no guys basically who've seen the playoffs, been in playoff series, won playoff series. Ja's great, but I just don't. Maybe they'll win a series, but I guess right now, who would they play? They would play the Nuggets. I honestly would probably give the Nuggets the benefit of the doubt just because of Nikola Jokic at that point. I think the West is, outside of those top two teams, is going to come down to who has the better superstar. And at the end of the day, the Utah Jazz, this is a team we've heard a lot about. It seems like this is a team that's going to break up after this season, most likely. Donovan Mitchell seems like his time in Utah is most likely coming to an end. It's everything I've been seeing seems like, honestly, the Knicks might be the team for him. He's a guy with, New York roots. He's a Mets fan. His dad works for the Mets. He's from, Westchester. So,
yeah.
Or Greenwich, maybe something in the area.
Yeah.
But that's a guy who I see potentially wanting to join the Knicks. The Mavericks, like you said, are very interesting. The Porzingis trade was very odd, but they've got Luka. He's a superstar. And it's kind of the same thing with the Nuggets. Like they have Jokic, but they've got injury problems of their own. At full health, this maybe is a team that can make a run in the playoffs. Timberwolves, great regular season. The future honestly looks pretty good for them with Ant Edwards, playing good. Cat looks good. D'Angelo Russell, he is what he is at this point in his NBA career. He's a solid player, but he's not going to be some superstar. Clippers, their season's over, to be honest. Kawhi, seems like he's done for the year. They're not even going to play this year. Paul George, doesn't sound good for him either. And then the Lakers are a very interesting team. With LeBron James and Anthony Davis, like you said, this is a team that you cannot count out of any series. And it's one of those teams that, I want to say I can see them going far in the playoffs, but then I watch them playing in the regular season and they lose to all these teams. They lost to the, I think it was before the break, but the Blazers, who had literally no one. It's just what's going on? And, LeBron James, as great as he is at this point in his career, as excellent as he's playing, he just does not seem like he's going to be able to carry this team to the playoffs. And I don't know what it is, because the problem is they've got a lot of guys who are, kind of past their prime and whatnot. And, Russell Westbrook, he is, I feel bad because this guy's been such a superstar for so long. And now after this season, people are just clowning on him. Seems to forget how good he was. And I don't know what's going on. I think, I'll be honest, I don't know mentally what's going on, but you got to think there's some sort of mental battle with all the, publicity, all the struggle in Los Angeles. I can't write them off. That's a team that I can see winning a series. I don't know I don't think they can win the finals, but LeBron James has proved a lot of people wrong in his career. The New Orleans Pelicans are another one of those teams. I don't think Zion Williamson will take the floor this year, but if he steps on the court with, Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, all of a sudden, you got to look at that team potentially and say, Zion, when he was playing was, elite player. So maybe that team could win a series, but I don't think, what do you think of that whole Zion situation? That's a whole nother, you hear this week that, he didn't even reach out to CJ McCollum. It seems evident that his time in New Orleans is coming to an end, but this guy's career at this point, it just seems like it's in a downward spiral at this point. What are your whole thoughts on the whole situation?
I think the Zion situation is a fascinating case of the player empowerment debate in the NBA. I think I generally fall on the side of, on the players most times. And I think JJ Redick, who this was he came on First Take and talked about Zion, and he's someone who, if you look at his opinions on most things, is almost always very pro player empowerment. And he didn't hold back. He made it pretty clear that Zion hasn't earned player empowerment. You can talk about, the idea of being on a rookie contract and wanting to get out of somewhere and all of that. But, I think it comes down to a pretty basic human thing of reaching out to a teammate, reaching out to somebody who I believe is he the vice president of the Players Association? I mean, CJ McCollum's a
He's
very
definitely up there.
yeah, he's a very respected player in this league. Forget that he's a 20-point per game scorer. I mean, how he doesn't reach out to him and say hi, and how he hasn't, I don't know. I think a big reason why we don't know what's going on with the injury is because the Pelicans don't know what's going on with the injury. It doesn't look good at this point, to be honest with Zion.
Yeah, I mean, the New Orleans Pelicans are, I mean, this isn't just a nightmare situation because, a few years ago when this team, had the number 1 overall pick, and then obviously I believe it was the number 4 overall pick they also had, but then they traded that, I believe, right? And then selected Hayes later on
They
in the draft or
traded
something like
down
that.
for Hayes and Alexander Walker, which is kind of both ended up not
Yeah,
working.
not great. So, I mean, that's killed them. But I mean, this was a team that, I mean, they're young, it really seemed like this team was on kind of the come up and that this was going to be a serious threat for years to come. Zion looked good, but I mean, I just don't know what's going on. This guy is, I mean, he's just faded out of, the public. I mean, there's been a few reports here and there, and you hear that, the weight has become a real problem and that, he's got all these issues. And I mean, I think this is a whole thing probably from him of where he's just trying to get out of there. It seems like he's already done, which sucks for the Pelicans, obviously. I mean, because I mean, this whole situation, I mean, it's like, it's one of the Ben Simmons type situations where it's like, what's kind of the value at this point? Because this is a guy who now, he's supposedly been injured this whole season. Obviously, was an elite player, really elite player with, major upside, when he was on the court. But all of a sudden, I mean, you just don't even know what's going on with him. It's just one of the, I mean, time will only tell with the situation, but it's crazy. I mean, to hear something like this of a player of his magnitude, of his stardom, and no one essentially knows what's going on. No one has heard from him, and he's, not reaching out to teammates, which is, if he's supposedly the superstar there, I mean, that's just ridiculous. I have no idea, but this team is just, they're, right now the 11 seed, a game out of the play-in, but I mean, what if they don't have Zion? I mean, it's just a nightmare. And I mean, it seems like he'll be traded, but I mean, it's like I'm kind of struggling to find the words because it's so confusing and so odd. Like there's been a lot of cases where we've seen players want to be traded, but this one is just particularly so off because the guy's essentially just disappeared, has all these injuries, and I mean, what's next? Essentially, I don't know what's to come, and it's just so weird and strange, and it's not been good for him because there's a lot of bad things about his character being said right now, because of what's being come out, and JJ Redick clearly, he's had experience and he did not have kind words. So clearly, not the finest or kindest endorsements of Zion going out there right now, but a very interesting situation to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it's so unprecedented to even think about a guy who's 21 and just averaged 27 and 7 at age 20 wanting out. I mean, you can't even, besides the fact that, his injuries and all the unknowns with his character, I don't even know what even is a trade package look like for Zion? Is it an older, like super, like, I can't even, it's hard for me to even imagine a world where a guy like this gets traded. And it's the Pelicans, it's almost like they're kind of floating around mediocrity as a team right now, and that's almost like the least noteworthy thing about them. It almost doesn't matter how good they are. They're kind of whatever. They're kind of an obscure NBA team right now. It's just all about the Zion situation. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's I think only time will tell. I think going into next season, we're going to have some type of answer in terms of, does he want out? Is he just kind of being difficult? Is this from his camp? I mean, I think, going into the NBA, I think everyone thought Zion was a super nice guy. I think he just seemed like a fun loving, everyone kind of loved him at Duke, but he seemed like the type of guy where it's like everyone, that was around him and knew him said he was a super nice guy. So it's unclear if this is a bit of like a Kawhi situation where it was more the family and the team around him. I've heard, that his stepdad is the one kind of controlling it here, and that, that kind of camp wasn't happy with the, lack of of publicity last year, having that great year last year. No one really talked about it, which is funny because, he was the biggest story in the NBA as a rookie who barely played. And then he started to play last year and was playing great, and no one really talked about it. And that's, statistically, I think the smallest market in the NBA in terms of the revenue that they generate from their own market. So I kind of understand why, there's some frustration, but at the same time, he's a guy who's in his second year, and it's not like the Pelicans have really, done anything wrong. And you just kind of feel for them because, they picked the no-brainer number 1 overall pick, and they're kind of getting burned for it when they didn't really do anything wrong.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you now look, and I'm sure within their organization, they're probably, it's crazy because you look at a guy like John Moran, and that's probably the guy they're wishing they took, because John Moran is, at this point, John Morant's, he's evolving into a superstar, a player right now that, I mean, what a top 2 potentially that could have been. I mean, what a draft class, really. I mean,
Yep.
Obviously RJ's been, he's improving. I mean, he's not at that level of those other 2, but RJ's, a very good young player who's still very young, like we've said. I mean, these guys are 21 years of age almost. I think John might be a little older, but I might even be wrong on that. But I mean, these are young, good players. And the Zion thing, like you said, 21 years old, and he's already wanting out. I mean, that's the one thing I'm starting to dislike about some of these leagues, and I think it really is pertaining to like the NBA and the NFL more than the MLB per se, is that a lot of players are starting to kind of ask for trades, which I understand. I understand if people are, unhappy and they're in a situation that they don't like and they feel they're being mistreated and all that. I'm all for that. And I'm all for players getting in situations where they're happy, their families are happy. And, because, a key superstar player being unhappy really, hurts the whole of the organization. But I just think it's reached a level where we're just seeing it kind of, if you're upset about one thing, we're just seeing guys kind of want out. And, it is what it is at this point. I think it's just become the nature of the game. It's definitely something that's been new in the last 5 or 10 years per se. I mean, I don't think this was something that happened really back in the day. I mean, obviously, it obviously happened. I mean, one thought that immediately comes to mind is like Scottie Pippen on the Bulls. Obviously, was one of the most publicly discussed trade requests. But it's very interesting to see how many superstars at this point in these the NBA and also the NFL with some of these quarterbacks are really asking to be traded, want out. It's very interesting. It's just a kind of interesting part of the game. And I mean, now we're seeing it in players who are in their third year in the league, and they're already I want out. And I mean, Zion Williamson, with the whole system in the NBA with restricted free agents, I mean, that's a guy who the Pelicans probably envisioned keeping for 10 years or so at least before he really had, I mean, it's crazy, the whole situation. You got to feel for the New Orleans Pelicans, and it's just something that they couldn't have predicted, and what a nightmare for them.
Yeah. I mean, generally in the NBA, you're looking at the first 4 years of the rookie deal. Obviously, that's full team control, and then restricted free agency. Almost always, if a team is willing to give a guy 5 years, it's almost always, the case that the guy is going to take it. So you're looking at about 9 years of theoretical team control. And, obviously, say you get to the last 2 years of that extension, that's when you can start to really think about a guy, whether it's a guy saying I want out or just a guy that's like, I'm probably going to leave or at least explore my options. You might as well think about trading me, like we saw with Paul George. I think that was, I think a situation where you could say like he was doing that in the right way. He didn't say I'm out of here. I hate you. I'm not playing for you. I think he just was like, hey, my contract's up in a year. I'm probably going to look at my options. And, I don't think you guys should have to get the short end of the stick. And I think that, there's something very different between that and the Zion situation. You look at, probably the most extreme example of loyalty right now. You look at Dame Lillard, who it's like, I mean, I can't even imagine Zion has nothing to complain compared to Damian Lillard. He's put 10 years of his heart and soul into this organization and really not gotten the contender he hoped for back. And he still kind of seems in it for the long run. Compared to Zion, which is just crazy in his 3rd year, which is just, I don't even know. It's just so unheard of.
Yeah. I mean, Dame Lillard's one of those guys is like fans are begging him to ask for a trade type deal. Even Trailblazers fans at this point probably just want the best for him. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, that's just the state of the NBA, to be honest. And that's one thing that's become, majorly a factor in the day and age. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think with that kind of does it for all the main storylines, topics going on right now in the NBA. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check us both out on Instagram. Our links will be in the bio. Check out the podcast on Instagram at Outside the Arena Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at Outside the Arena. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all back here next week.